Trump had a fly land on him in Anaheim. You remember the thing that landed on Cruz's face, whatever the hell that was, and then he ate it in the middle of one of the debates? Okay, but do I believe that Trump and Ted Cruz are demon-possessed? Of course not! There's no such thing as demon-possessed! People don't smell of sulfur! So, this lunatic has got a certain percentage of the American people thinking, oh my God, I knew it. The sulfur and the flies. We got to do something about these people because they are the devil. Literally, that's what they think. This is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Anyone who believes in Alex Jones and believes these theories, I got bad news for you, man. You really got to go get help. You do. I don't know if you belong in an actual hospital, you know, in one of those white jackets and stuff, but you at least need treatment. Go talk to a therapist. Alex is gone, man. I mean, there ain't no therapist gonna help Alex. Who passed away in a car accident at 4:30 in the morning recently. He wrote for Rolling Stone, BuzzFeed. He was also a contributor to the Young Turks, and we've been asking some questions about his death. Obviously, it was strange circumstances. His car, of course, wound up being in a fiery crash. A lot of people have been asking questions, but overall, you know, you have no evidence yet that there's anything amiss other than a terrible, horrible car crash. But now there is some piece of information that we were looking for, and that is significant, that now makes me think that there should be a much wider investigation. And that comes from Richard Clark. Now, Richard Clark is a very significant person. He was a former U.S. National Coordinator for Security, Infrastructure Protection, and Counterterrorism. He's the guy who was right about bin Laden and Al-Qaeda. He was in the Clinton administration as a counterterrorism advisor, and then he was in the Bush administration. And he had been telling them, Al-Qaeda is coming. We have to do something. We have to do a principals meeting. We have to get ready. They didn't listen to him, and at times they said, oh, he's got his hair on fire. Turned out he was 100% right. Now, he has voiced some concerns about what could be done to cars remotely. And this is shocking, even if you think that there's nothing untoward in the Michael Hastings story, which is, of course, incredibly possible, right? Even removed from that story, this facts that Richard Clark is giving us is amazing, and it affects all of us. So what is it? Let me explain. He says, there's reason to believe that intelligence agencies for major powers, including the United States, know how to remotely seize control of a car. Whoa, hold on. We didn't know that. Why is this not the biggest revelation in a long, long time? So, again, putting Hastings' situation aside for a second, so they can seize control of any of our cars? And what if you have, there's 1.5 million people in the intelligence community. I don't know how many of them have access to this kind of power, but I assume not that many, but a decent amount. How about if they got an ex-wife or a guy they hate? They can remotely control your cars? He continues, what has been revealed as a result of some research at universities is that it's relatively easy to hack your way into the control system of a car and do such things as cause acceleration when the driver doesn't want acceleration, to throw on brakes when the driver doesn't want the brakes on, to launch an airbag. You can do some really highly destructive things now through hacking a car, and it's not that hard. Now look, I had read similar things, but it was on some blog somewhere, and I thought, well, maybe yes, maybe no, right? This is Richard Clark. He was our top counterterrorism advisor. He had every piece of information available to him when he was inside the United States government. He says doing it is easy. We didn't sign on for that. Did you sign on for the government being able to control your car remotely? Who in their right mind would agree to that? It gets even scarier. He says, so if there were a cyber attack on the car, and I'm not saying there was, I think whoever did it would probably get away with it. Now, if you thought the rest of it was bad, it turns out it's incredibly easy to get away with it, almost impossible to detect. Why is the whole country not talking about this? Is Richard Clark wrong? If he is, I'd like to see 10 other guys counter him on it. If he's not wrong, okay, they can destroy any of our cars. whoever they are, I'm not saying it's Obama, I'm not saying it's the government, I'm not saying it's the FBI, but obviously some people can do it. They have this enormous power and you can't detect it. All right, continuing. He says, I'm not a conspiracy guy. In fact, I spent most of my life knocking down conspiracy theories. But my rule has always been you don't knock down a conspiracy theory until you can prove it wrong. And in the case of Michael Hastings, so he's specifically talking about this case. In the case of Michael Hastings, what evidence is available publicly is consistent with a car cyber attack. And the problem with that is you can't prove it. Now think about why Richard Clark's even saying this in the first place. He doesn't have to say this, and in fact, he's probably going to get a lot of heat for saying this, but he's saying it anyway. I don't know if he knows anything more than we know, but even this is incredibly troubling. Furthermore, he says, I think you'd probably need the very best of the U.S. government intelligence or law enforcement officials to discover it. But now, in this case, unfortunately, those are among the different people that people suspect. They're worried that Michael Hastings was going to write about the intelligence community. In fact, there's an email from Michael Hastings, which was sent to BuzzFeed, and it was also sent to the Young Turks, where he said, I'm worried that the FBI is investigating me. Now, the FBI says they're not investigating. Who knows, right? But whether it's the FBI or anyone else, he's worried the intelligence community is looking into him. The only people who can detect whether there was a car cyber attack is the intelligence community. And by the way, the LAPD, now a lot of course, immediately, everybody else in the news is like, LAPD said they're not suspecting anything that's, wrong or untoward. But I mean, if I'm the LAPD and I can't detect this, I look at it and I say, yeah, it's a single car crash at 4:30 in the morning. There's no reason to suspect out of the gate that somebody did something to him. But that doesn't mean that the LAPD is right. And it's not even the LAPD saying definitively, no, nothing bad happened here. We investigated and we're positive nothing happened. They just say it looks like a one-person car crash. You're right, that's what it looks like. And here's a former counterterrorism advisor from the United States of America saying, oh, it looks like a car cyber attack, and it would be incredibly easy to do, and you couldn't detect it. Well, if you're not scared by that, if you're not paying attention, that makes, whether they actually hit to Michael Hastings is an entirely different question. But the fact that they have that capability is amazing. And by the way, if we have that capability, how far are the Chinese from being able to have that capability? Can they do it to people inside Russia? Can they do it to people inside the United States? Are you worried yet? This is not a light person saying this. This is a guy who had access to every top secret document in the United States. Top counterterrorism advisor. Now look, two more things on this. One, there's got to be a serious investigation here. You can't just assume that it's fine if Richard Clark says, no, it looks like a car cyber attack. Well, then I need someone to investigate if it's a car cyber attack. I don't know how we investigate that, but if I was the government, I would say, look, I need every inspector general that's supposed to overlook their departments that are involved or could possibly be involved in this to overlook their departments. And to get me the best possible guys to try to figure out what happened to that car. And think about why it's so hard to detect, too. Not only is it hard to tell when it's done, but afterwards, the car was such a fiery mess that the whole thing melted down. How are you going to go back and get the evidence? It is going to be enormously hard to prove one way or another. Second of all, if I was Mercedes-Benz, I would be highly motivated. Because right now, if you go with the official storyline, Mercedes-Benz explode upon impact. If you're going a little too fast and you hit something, look, crashes happen.
Michael Hastings is a fascinating one. The story of what he was investigating is perhaps even more important. Carl Gibson has been looking into this and done some just brilliant reporting. Interesting piece over at Occupy.com, Who Killed Michael Hastings? And perhaps, in my mind, even more important, why. Carl Gibson is on the line with us. Occupy.com is the website. Hey, Carl, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me on, Tom. It's good to talk to you.
Thank you. Can you recap for our listeners who may not be familiar with the name Michael Hastings, just the elevator speech, the story in a capsule?
Sure. Michael Hastings was he was an investigative reporter for Rolling Stone magazine. He he authored the report in 2010 that was responsible for General Stanley McChrystal getting fired. He was overseeing all U.S. and NATO forces in Afghanistan up until that point, and was also the former commander of the Joint Special Operations Command, which encompasses Army Rangers, Navy SEALs.
The general was, not the reporter, right?
Yeah, right.
And this reporter got him fired. Michael Hastings got General Stanley McChrystal fired with his report. So then what happened?
Yeah, so just about 4 months ago, his brand new 2013 Mercedes-Benz C250 Coupe, it was seen crossing the Melrose intersection in the Hancock Park neighborhood on Highland Avenue. And a witness who saw the crash from beginning to end said it bounced 3 times, it accelerated rapidly, and slammed into a palm tree where it exploded almost on impact. And he said even first responders couldn't even approach the car for a while because it kept exploding. Now, this is really weird because just before that happened, Michael Hastings, he was actually trying to get off the grid. He told his colleagues at BuzzFeed in an email that he was working on a really big story and was going to get off the radar for a little while. And he cited fears over federal agents actually interviewing his close friends and family.
So there might be an assumption that he was actually assassinated or that his car was tampered with in some way.
Yeah, LA Weekly, they did a profile of Hastings and his life just before the crash. They had reported through talking to his neighbor, Jordana Thigpen, whom he was really close to. Jordana Thigpen actually said that Hastings was really scared and wanted to leave town after he read about the DOJ seizing AP phone records and after reading about all of what Edward Snowden had leaked, and he was convinced he was under surveillance. And in fact, the night of the crash, he unsuccessfully tried to borrow his neighbor's Volvo because he was afraid that his car had been hacked.
Hacked?
Yeah, there's actually a computer science professor at UC San Diego who hacked into modern car systems from all manufacturers. And most of these modern cars from 2008 and onward are equipped with a computer system, so when you tap on your accelerator or on your brake, you're actually just telling a computer what you want the car to do. And so what this professor did, Stephen Savage, he figured out how to hack into one of these computer systems from 1,000 miles away and take over everything in the drivetrain, including, acceleration and brakes. And, it was really strange because Michael Hastings' friend, the Staff Sergeant Joe Biggs, said that Hastings drove like a grandma, and all of his friends and family said the same thing. So for him to be driving erratically like that was very out of character for him. Now, I wanted to add to that, Richard Clark, he was the counterterrorism chief under the Clinton and George W. Bush administrations. He actually said at the end of an interview with Huffington Post that the car that Hastings was driving and the crash itself looked a lot like a car cyber attack.
A cyber attack. So, so what was Michael Hastings investigating that either was so big that it drove him to some kind of insane suicide, or was so big that it caused somebody to hack his car and kill him, or was just coincidentally being investigated at a time that his brand new Mercedes decided to...
Meantime, there are questions multiplying today about the mysterious death of award-winning journalist Michael Hastings. Hastings is best known for a Rolling Stone article that led to the resignation of Afghanistan Commander General Stanley McChrystal. Last week, Hastings was killed in a high-speed one-car crash. Immediately, his friends started raising questions about whether this was really an accident, as police quickly ruled. Then yesterday, we learned that hours before his death, Hastings sent a cryptic email to his friends and associates saying that the feds were investigating him and that he was on to a big story. Sergeant Joe Biggs is one of the friends who received that chilling email, and he joins us live. Sergeant, thank you for being here and thank you for your service. So you knew Michael Hastings, and I know that this raised alarm bells for you when you heard that he was killed. Why do you question whether this was truly an accident?
It's the fact, the way that other times that we've spoken before, and this email I got, it was just very panicked, and it didn't seem like something normally we would talk about. And I just felt a gut feeling, something didn't feel right.
Mm-hmm. But the police say it's an accident. They looked into it. They said, look, he was driving fast. It was 4:30 in the morning. It was dark. Lost control of the car, went through a red light, hit a tree.
Well, his friends and family, they know him. Everyone says he drives like a grandma. So that right there doesn't seem like something that he would be doing. I mean, he had a lot of friends and family that cared about him. He had a good life to live. There's no way he would be acting erratic like that and driving that out of control.
What do you think is going on here? I mean, because we talked about this a couple of times just because it's getting so much attention on the internet, and people who are close to Mr. Hastings are still raising questions about the LAPD and their conclusions that this was an accident. What is the alternate theory, that he was murdered, that he was intentionally targeted by someone?
I don't know that. I just know that from the email to hours later dying, it's just not a coincidence like that. Things don't add up. There's a lot of questions that need to be answered. I contacted by email Mercedes today, asked them if it's normal for their cars to blow up to that extent, for if the engines fly out on a normal basis. I mean, these are the real questions we need to ask.
And what of I mean, obviously he was investigating a couple of high-profile cases he was looking into. He said Jill Kelly, who was connected with the whole David Petraeus and General Clark. Go ahead.
His wife today said that that's definitely not true, that he was investigating into Jill Kelly.
Michael Hastings' wife says he was not investigating that.
Yes.
Okay. Well, what was he investigating, as far as you know, that would have caused any consternation whatsoever by someone?
CIA, but from what he said, or one of the things he said is it was going to be the biggest story yet.
You know how people are going to react to this. They're going to say the tinfoil hat people think the government killed this journalist by taking over his car, doing something to his car, and the other people are going to say,
come on, Clem, you can do it.
Throughout the years, you've kept your best friend moving.
The toxicology report in Michael Hastings' death has been released, and some of the details in that toxicology report are fascinating. There were a number of rumors being spread about how he was possibly drunk at the time of the car accident. For those of you who somehow didn't hear the story, Michael Hastings did die in a tragic car accident a few months ago. His Mercedes was caught speeding on surveillance, and he crashed into a tree, and it ultimately led to his death. He died instantly upon impact. Now, the toxicology report indicates that he had some marijuana in his system, and that he had a tiny amount of amphetamine, okay? And I want to read you the exact portion of the toxicology report that indicates this. It says, toxicology shows a small amount of amphetamine in the blood, consistent with possible intake of methamphetamine many hours before death. Unlikely to have an intoxicative effect at the time of the accident. Marijuana was present in the blood, but mostly in the form of its metabolite, indicating intake hours earlier. All other drugs were negative, and of course that includes alcohol as well. So the reason why I bring that up is because now there are a number of stories written that I feel are very misleading, and it is upsetting me. Now, I should note that drugs like Adderall or Ritalin, legal prescription drugs, have amphetamine in it. I mean, that's the active ingredient in those drugs. So without really exploring into that before writing these articles, people have decided to say, oh, he had meth and marijuana in his system. One example that I can give you is an article written for LA Weekly by Dennis Romero, and he had the headline that said the following: breaking, Michael Hastings coroner's report reveals likely meth and marijuana use. I despise that headline, because that makes it seem as if he was smoking marijuana and smoking meth before he got into his car that night, and that was not the case.
And so I want to break it down a little further. Now, of course, Michael Hastings, great investigative reporter, did the legendary story on Stanley McChrystal, the general that was leading our efforts in Afghanistan. He had to step down, the general did, after that report because of what Michael revealed. And most of the articles talk about, oh, there was conspiracy theories because of that. And it seems like they're going out of their way to say, like, everything was normal, he was a druggie. You see that? The government didn't do anything wrong. It was that he took a lot of drugs. Now, let me explain further to give you more details as to the kind of propaganda that's out there in every article I've read so far. Number one is Anna explained in the LA Weekly article, that's the headline. Not the toxicology report actually says none of the drugs had anything to do with with the crash. That's what the report says.
The toxicology report, 17 pages, sorry to interrupt you, Cenk, says that he was not intoxicated at the time of the crash. That is the lead. That's what should be in the headline.
Not intoxicated, had nothing to do with the crash, which the LA Weekly article acknowledges later on, almost at their very last paragraph. Now, they have 12 paragraphs in the article, I counted, okay? And a lot of them are just one sentence. In some of the ones that involve drugs, it's several sentences mentioning drugs in a couple of different ways. But I went with the most conservative. I said, if a paragraph has drugs in it, I'm going to mark it as one. If it doesn't, I'm going to mark it as the other, right? Out of the 12 paragraphs, 6 of them mention drugs. Now, remember, the drugs had nothing to do with the accident, but the headline is drugs. 6 out of the 12 paragraphs and multiple sentences within those paragraphs have to do with drugs. Now, don't think it's just the LA Weekly. Then I looked around a little bit. Then I went to the Atlantic, and what do we have there? Michael Hastings had relapsed before fatal accident. That's the headline over there, okay? And again, oh my God, meth, marijuana, you see that? You see that? Just look away. It's a perfectly normal accident. It was just that he was a druggie, and that's why he died. And by the way, also in the report, they say that, he was going very fast, above 60 miles an hour. Okay, look, the cameras show him going very fast, show him running a red light, above 60 is fast, but it's not like it's 120. I don't know, maybe it was. It just says above 60.
Yeah, there was a witness that we spoke to who said that it seemed as if he was going top speed. So I don't have any doubt that he was speeding at the time of the crash. It's just not something that you would expect from Michael when you know him personally. I mean, a lot of people who know him personally will say, like, he was a very careful driver. And